If a musical wins the coveted Best Musical of the Year Tony Award, does that automatically guarantee its success? Watch on to find out. Hi friends, if you're new here, my name is Katharine Quinn. I talk about Broadway lifestyle, financial freedom. I also work on Broadway, off-Broadway, pre-Broadway, across the country, and I love demystifying, debunking the myths of Broadway. I find it to be an incredibly opaque industry, and I wish I had had more information as I entered professional theater making. So the more that I'm working in the industry, the more I want to share the information that I'm learning so that I at least make a little scratch in the opacity of the theater industry. This is me with a tiny chisel, and over here's Broadway. So let's talk about this. The Best Musical Wikipedia page is one that I know well. I'll throw a screenshot up here. It's so beautiful. I love scrolling through back to 1949, back to Kiss Me Kate, and then all the way down to Kimberly Akimbo in 2022. We love it. We love our Best Musical winners. Oftentimes, these shows become part of the canon. Now, does that mean that they were financial successes? Let's find out. I also think it's an interesting question, what makes a Broadway show a success, but we can unpack that in another video. All right, the first show that we're gonna talk about is Everything Today is Thoroughly Modern Millie. Ran for 2 years, but recouped 80% on Broadway, and then it fully recouped on tour. But it was not a commercial success. It's interesting because nowadays I feel like when a show runs for 2 years, it's typically recouped its investment, because Broadway ticket prices have gone way up since 2002 when little Millie Dilmount made her appearance on The Great White Way. That little star. Sutton Foster, you know, the understudy story of the year. Anyway, it was also at the Marriott Marquis. This is something to unpack. This is just now sort of registering. How can a show at the Marriott Marquis, which is one of the largest houses on Broadway, we're gonna check the capacity, 1,612 seats. How can 2 years of 1,612 seats, those seats must have been so reasonably priced. I have to look now. I have to find out what the average ticket price was, because how could this be a commercial flop? That makes no sense. I mean, 80% recoupment is not bad, but they didn't make their money back. This is a good point to just check in and say, do we all know what recoupment means? It just means that the investors and producers made the money back that it took to put the show up and cover the weekly running costs. If you want my breakdown of sort of the nuts and bolts of how Broadway shows are financed, click this up here. Okay, it was 20 years ago, but the average ticket price was like somewhere between 48 and like 55 bucks. Let's go to an inflation calculator. Okay, that's still only $86 now. And our average ticket price, it's not double that, but it's like 1.5 times that expensive. Whoa. I made a TikTok video about this, about Broadway ticket price inflation, but isn't that bananas? That the average ticket price for like the Tony Award winning Best Musical was $50 20 years ago, which is the equivalent of $86 now. And yet our average ticket price is almost $145. What? Okay. Anyway, I guess that's why it didn't recoup. So I don't know, maybe producers are being smarter and we're just the ones paying the price, literally. All that said, 80% recoupment on Broadway, and then those who invested in the tour saw multiple dividends. Huzzah. But as I unpacked in my previous video, just because you invested in Broadway doesn't mean you're automatically investing in the tour, but a lot of the time you're given first right of refusal to invest in the tour and make some of that money back and then some. The next show we're gonna talk about is Titanic, which I think is a 1997 production. Let's check. I have this thing called a phone. It has the whole internet on it. Titanic, while winning Best Musical in 1997, was a $10 million production, which 20 years ago was unheard of. Time for the inflation calculator again. Okay, $19 million, which is interesting because that's about the average price, I feel like, of a big musical on Broadway now. I feel like most musicals are capitalizing at $15 to $25 million. It ran just under 2 years and it recouped just under half of its capitalization. Oh, again, average ticket price, $54. Producers was just nicer back then. They just weren't making us foot the bill the way they are now. Producers are trying to actually make money nowadays. I mean, producers had to try to make money back in the day too, but maybe they were just more content to like, y'all are watching me think in real time here, but maybe they were just more content to like, maybe this is a hit, maybe this is a hit, maybe this is a hit, and then when they strike gold, it sort of covers all their sins and like whatever. But now it's like, they just want better odds on every show, which honestly, same. I don't want to have to pay $900 on the receiving end of that Broadway show. So what's the solution? Let's fix Broadway, everyone. Okay, well I have some of our inflation stats here. The current average ticket price is $148, which is 147% inflation, outpacing by 56%. So we have severely outpaced inflation in terms of Broadway ticket prices. The example that I was using on TikTok was 2002 to 2022, but 1997 is even worse. It's pretty brutal. Okay, next production we're gonna talk about, the original production of Sweeney Todd. This is the 1979 production directed by famed, legendary Hal Prince. Oh my God, Victor Garber was Anthony. Either I didn't know that or that was lost in the recesses of my brain. I just think of him as like contemporary Daddy Warbucks. And then like Human I Saw in Hello Dolly, Horace Vandergelder. And obviously Legally Blonde legend, Victor. Such good work. Angela Lansbury as Mrs. Lovett, Len Cariou as Sweeney Todd. So like legends, legends, legends. We have been much kinder to the revival. Let's look at the original review for Sweeney Todd on Broadway. I mean, it won Best Musical. This is so interesting. All right, now we've gotten to a review. Score was loved. There is a parody of Annie and Sweeney Todd. Is that real? I need to read more original reviews. Do you know this? Among many other things in the score is a musical joke or two. There is, for example, the devastating parody of Sweeney Todd's Broadway neighbor, Annie. Here is Miss Lansbury pounding away at the pastry table, worrying about the availability of dog meat and singing with relish about the gruesome contents of her pies. Did everyone know this but me? A line of clear melody soars as she sings. The worst pies, the melody is Annie's sorrowful, tomorrow, tomorrow. That's not entirely true. Although, in the tomorrow, I love you tomorrow. Huh, is that real? Or did the critic just think they were clever? Okay, so Walter Kerr, there's a Walter Kerr theater, was the New York Times critic at the time. I'm afraid that what Sweeney Todd most wants to be is impressive. It succeeds in that. Blah, blah, blah. This is so interesting. It really is not a rave. Yet with so much to occupy our eyes and ears and so much to respect, there is an uncomfortable void in the evening, to my mind a most serious one. The story as told leaves us restive and unabsorbed. It also leaves us puzzled as to why its creators went to so much trouble to tell it. Isn't it funny how much kinder we are to revivals than the original productions? Truly another video that I fully anticipate making, because obviously Sweeney Todd is now the stuff of legends and the current revival is $1 million to see and doing incredibly well. It's just so fascinating. Anyway, I got away from the original point, which, can you blame me? There's so much interesting stuff here. The tomorrow thing, is that real? I can't get over this. Please leave a comment if you know the answer or if you were also baffled by this. At any rate, it didn't recoup its initial investment. It was a financial disappointment, recouping just shy of 60% of its costs. However, the revival is doing exceptionally well. Will Rogers Follies, another Best Musical winner. 981 performances over 2 years, but didn't recoup. So as I was researching Will Rogers Follies, I found it really interesting that I found an article from the New York Times in 1980 that was called Tougher Odds on Broadway, a special report, Make Money on Broadway, Break a Leg. Basically about how impossible it was to actually make money on Broadway back in 1980. Now here we are, what, nearly 30 years later, 45 years later? Tough. Nice work if you can get it. It's so wild having these 2+ year runs that don't qualify as commercial successes. Like, what were these producers doing? Did they just think that they couldn't raise the prices that way? I mean, this was pre-dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is the thing, I'm sure we all know what it is at this point, but instead of having fixed prices, we now have algorithms and technology that will sort of like, you can set an outside cap price, an internal cap price, and sort of set based on demand. And so maybe technology just told these producers that people were willing to pay more and they could get closer to recoupment, and why not? Sunset Boulevard, after 3 years, only recouped 85%. The other shows that were Best Musical winners, but not commercial successes, commercial flops, were Hallelujah Baby, the only time that a Tony Award was given to a show that had closed, Raisin, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, Jerome Robbins' Broadway, Kiss of the Spider Woman, and Passion. Okay, I wanna know already, what has been the most surprising thing to you in this? Because I know that I have learned, among other things, the Annie joke inside of Sweeney Todd, but also the inflation of it all is so mind-boggling to me. Had you previously wrapped your brain around this? It's wild. But the big question that I have lingering at the end of this is, what qualifies a Broadway success? Like, what does that even mean? Because a lot of these shows are the stuff of legends, so Sweeney didn't recoup, but Sweeney Todd is like canon, 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 as canon as canon gets. It's like the best known Sondheim musical, one of the best known, it's gotta be the best known, right? Oh, Into the Woods. Second best known Sondheim musical. So what qualifies as a Broadway success, do you think? Like, if these were best musicals, commercial flops, but still part of the canon, are they still like Broadway successes? They gotta be, right? I don't know. I just think it's interesting. I wanna hear your thoughts. As always, I welcome your comments, your questions, leave them down below. Since you made it to the end of this video, it'd do me a huge favor if you hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, or left a comment down below. Your engagement is gonna help YouTube know, the algorithm know, what kind of humans to share my content with, which I really appreciate, particularly as a newer YouTube creator. As always, I invite you to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at It's Katharine Quinn. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.